Wildcatting is not simply taking a wild guess. It is high-risk exploration, putting money, crews, acreage, and reputation behind a geological idea before the field is even proven. The tools have changed from surface seeps and gut instinct to 3D seismic modeling, horizontal drilling, and real-time data. But the willingness to risk capital on an unproven play is still the same. Every person in the oil field has heard the word wildcatter. It sounds like a guy in a dusty hat who leases 40 acres, drills one well, hits a gusher, buys a Cadillac, then loses it all to drill the next one. And occasionally, that is exactly what happened. Today on Crude Logic, where the term wildcatter came from, the original gamblers of the oil patch, the wild men who turned Texas into an oil empire, and why the modern version may be wearing a Patagonia vest instead of a cowboy hat. So what is a wildcatter? A wildcatter is an independent oil and gas explorer who drills a well outside a known producing field or takes a major risk on an unproven formation, deeper target, or new basin. In plain oil field language, everybody else says, there's no production there, and the wildcatter says, well, maybe you're looking in the wrong spot. The well itself is commonly called a wildcat well. It is exploratory drilling, not development drilling. Development drilling means you already know the reservoir is there and you are drilling more wells to produce it. Wildcatting means you are trying to prove the reservoir exists, works, and can make money. And that last part matters. You can find hydrocarbons and still have a bad well. You need enough volume, enough pressure, enough permeability, or in shale, enough rock quality and completion performance to turn a geological win into an economic win. The term wildcat was American slang for a risky venture before the oil business adopted it. By the 1800s, people used wildcat for speculative banks and questionable investments. Oil explorers eventually inherited the label because drilling in unproven territory was one of the purest forms of high-stakes speculation. So a wildcatter is not somebody who ignores geology. The good ones are usually obsessed with geology. They study faults, salt domes, structure, shows, pressure, nearby production, lease maps, and any old well log they can get their hands on. The difference is they are willing to put a rig on the line before the answer is guaranteed. So who were the original wildcatters? Some of the best known early wildcatters and independent oilmen include Patillo Higgins, Anthony F. Lucas, H.L. Hunt, Glenn McCarthy, and Sid Richardson. These men were not all geologists in the modern sense. Some were landmen before landmen had a job title and way before it was a show. Some were drillers, some were investors, some were just stubborn enough to keep going after smarter people told them to quit. And the early business was brutally simple. Lease land, raise money, find a drilling crew, drill a hole, and hope the ground pays you back before your investors decide you need to disappear. That is the part of the oil field history people forget. Before the integrated companies and corporate budgets, the industry was built by people betting their own money or somebody else's money on an idea. If you want one story that explains a wildcatter mentality, it is Spindletop. In the late 1800s, Patillo Higgins became convinced that a hill near Beaumont, Texas, then called Sour Spring Mound, held oil and gas. People had noticed sulfurous springs and gas seeps around the area. Higgins believed the strange ground was telling them something. He helped organize the Gladys City Oil, Gas, and Manufacturing Company in 1892. The first drilling attempts failed. They fought difficult formations, shallow equipment limits, and money problems. Higgins eventually split from the original venture, but he did not abandon the idea that the hill had oil underneath it. Then came Anthony Lucas, an engineer and one of the country's leading experts on salt domes. At the time, plenty of people doubted that Gulf Coast salt domes could produce commercial oil. Lucas did not. Lucas and Higgins made an agreement. Lucas took charge of the drilling. They brought in the Hamill brothers, who had rotary drilling experience, and drilled the Lucas No. 1 well. On January 10, 1901, at roughly 1,139 feet, the well came alive. Mud started bubbling. Then the drilling pipe shot out of the hole. Then gas. Then oil. The Lucas Gusher erupted more than 100 feet into the air and was estimated at around 100,000 barrels per day. It blew for 9 days before it was controlled. At the time, it was larger than anything the industry had seen. Imagine being a roughneck on that location. No modern BOP stack, no digital pit volume totalizer, no company man texting the office, just a hole in the ground turning into an oil volcano, and every person nearby realizing history was happening. Spindletop changed the industry. It helped make Texas an oil powerhouse, drove down oil prices, brought huge investment into the region, and helped launch companies that became Gulf, Texaco, Amoco, and Humble Oil, the predecessor to Exxon's U.S. operations. The lesson is that Higgins and Lucas saw a geological idea others did not fully understand, stuck with it through failure, and found the people and technology needed to test it. That is wildcatting at its best. Conviction backed by evidence, persistence, and a willingness to be wrong in public. The modern wildcatter does not necessarily show up with a divining rod and a mule. Today's wildcatter may have a geoscience team, 3D seismic, petrophysics, reservoir models, offset data, directional drilling, and a completions program that costs more than an entire early Texas town. But the basic question is still the same. Is there a commercial play here that the market has not fully recognized yet? One modern example is Continental Resources founder Harold Hamm. Hamm started his company in 1967 and built into a major independent producer. He became one of the most prominent figures in the Bakken Shale story, backing horizontal drilling and hydraulic fracturing to help turn a once overlooked formation into a major U.S. oil province. The Bakken was not a drill one vertical well and watch it rain money story. It took horizontal drilling, multi-stage fracs, better completion design, more capital, and years of figuring out what worked. That is why modern wildcatting is often less about drilling a totally isolated hole and more about identifying the next productive bench, the next overlooked fairway, the next basin, or the next application of technology. A modern wildcatter might be asking, can this old conventional field be redeveloped? Is this deeper zone commercial? Can we find oil where everyone else sees only marginal acreage? That modern mindset is still alive. In fact, as the best U.S. acreage gets consolidated and mature shale plays become more developed, companies are increasingly looking for the next opportunity beyond the obvious core areas. Wildcatting today can mean several things. Drilling an exploration well outside an established field, testing a new formation or deeper horizon beneath existing production, leasing acreage in an unproven or underappreciated fairway, applying new drilling and completion technology to rock that was previously uneconomic, taking a contrarian position when larger companies have passed on the opportunity. And it is not just a geological gamble. It is a business gamble. You can be right about the rock and wrong about the commodity prices. That is why wildcatters are a different breed. They have to be part geologist, part financier, part negotiator, part optimist, and part person who can hear that will never work without immediately packing up their maps. We'd like to take a break to thank our sponsor, Pump Jack Apparel. If you have apparel needs in the oil field and you want to work with a company that is trusted by the oil field, this company is Permian-based and Permian-proud. They can do hats, shirts, one-run items, company stores. They can do it all. So if you have apparel needs, Pump Jack Apparel is your source. You can find them at www.pumpjackapparel.com. Now let's get back to it. Now it is time for a segment I like to call Wildcat or Housecat. We name an oilfield decision, and you decide whether it is bold exploration or somebody hiding under a desk until the next quarterly earnings call. Today's example, we have a lease position, promising shows, nearby production, a technical team that likes the target, and a rig available. But we are going to wait until every possible risk has been eliminated. If every risk has been eliminated, you are not wildcatting. You're ordering lunch. Wildcatting is not recklessness. But if you need a 100% guarantee before you drill, you are probably in the wrong business. The history of the oil and gas industry is the history of people willing to test an idea before the rest of the world believed in it. From Patillo Higgins looking at a strange hill outside Beaumont, to Anthony Lucas betting on salt domes, to modern independents betting on shell plays and overlooked acreage, the tools changed, but the instinct did not. Wildcatters are the people who see possibility where everyone else sees risk. Sometimes they drill a dry hole. Sometimes they drill a well that changes a town, a state, an industry, or an entire country. That is the difference between a wildcat and a house cat. One stays where it is safe, the other goes looking for something nobody else has found. If you have ever watched a geologist defend a prospect with 47 slides, a landman chase leases, or a drilling crew make a bad idea work through pure stubbornness, please subscribe, share the show, and tell us, who is the greatest wildcatter of all time? That's the show for today's Wildcat Wednesday. Until next time, stay safe, keep drilling, and remember, it is only logic if it is crude logic. We'll see you next time.
4 in the morning, coffee black, steel toes hitting an old gravel track. Hard hats on, boots in the mud, turning diesel into blood. From the Permian dirt to the Rocky Mountain snow, if the rig starts drilling, we're ready to go. Sun comes up, another 12, ain't nobody gonna do it themselves. We drill it deep, we build this land with busted knuckles and calloused hands. This is crude logic. Welcome to the show.